Well, great day, everybody. This is Pastor Jennifer, and we want to thank you for taking another opportunity to meet me in the break room. I'm so excited today. I have one of our church members and ministry leaders in the house. This is Dr. Krisha Hawkins, and we are so excited to have you here with us. Some people know you by Dr. Angela Hawkins, but we're so grateful to have you here today and excited about some upcoming events and some things we're going to be able to offer not only to the members of Jackson Revival Center, but to our community. And so if you will this morning, just begin by telling us a little bit about yourself, some of your work experience, a little bit about your background, and then we'll move on into the things we want to discuss today.
Thank you. Well, first of all, let me just say I am happy and humbled to be here. I appreciate you and your leadership and your vision for the people of not only this church, but the people of the community. Not just the Jackson community, but we serve the community everywhere. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. I'm honored to serve.
So I have been a registered nurse. I'm a doctorate of nursing. I've been a registered nurse for over 20 years. And I'm an educator. I teach at several institutions in doctoral programs, adjunct. I'm also the National Director of Training for for the largest healthcare institution in the nation. For that, and I've been an HR director for over seven states.
Wow!
So I've got a breadth of education and knowledge as far as those areas go, and I've done a lot of leadership education and development. So. Just happy to be here and happy to share some of that experience.
Absolutely. We've got something coming up on October the 24th, I believe. It will be via Zoom, and it'll be from 10 a.m. that morning until 12 noon. So just 2 hours to invest in ourselves. But we will be offering training for performance-based interviews.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about what all that day will entail, what people can expect. And then I want to talk about a book that you recently released, and we'll just kind of tie it all together. But tell us about the training coming up on October the 24th.
So the training on October the 24th is, as you said, on performance-based interviewing. The name of the training is How to Toot Your Own Horn Without Blowing It. And we are going to learn about how to do performance-based interviewing. And we know that right now, a lot of people are either out of work or looking for work or underemployed because of COVID. And so we want to serve you by giving you some interview skills on how to help you find that job, that better job that you're looking for, by giving you the skills that you need to do performance-based interviewing. So there is a difference between performance-based interviewing and traditional interviewing. And what is that difference? We're going to help you know that when you come to our training on October 24th. So bring your pencil and your paper because you will be taking notes, and be ready because we are excited about helping you.
Very good. Very good. And so is there a cost for this training?
There's no cost. There's no cost for the training. Just a little sweat equity. So be ready to learn, be ready to engage, and be ready to, I say it's a training, but it's actually a workshop. So be ready to work, be ready to participate, and be ready to engage. But there's no financial cost. You will need to register for the training, and we will be providing some registration details later on.
Very good. You know, so many times people, I know just from interviewing people and from hiring people over the years, sometimes the best employees don't know how to sell themselves. Some of my employees might not have been hired other places if it were based just on their interview. Correct. But just because they didn't interview well, doesn't mean they're not great employees. Then I've had some people who interviewed very well, but they oversold themselves and underdelivered. So you're going to show people how to know their worth and how to market that and how to live up to that.
Correct. Absolutely, Pastor. That is absolutely correct. The trick is to get people to know, like, and trust you during that very, very small interview window. And it's not enough right now to just have the technical knowledge and just to have the expertise, especially in this competitive job market, because this is a very competitive job market. You want to sell yourself, and the resume or that piece of paper, that application, that's just getting you in the door to talk to people. You have to be able to, once you get there, sell yourself and get people to know you, like you, trust you in a very, very short amount of time. And so that's what we want to do in a performance-based interview, where you're not just getting people to just tell about the work necessarily that you've done, but you want to tell about the work that you've done and get it over in such a way that they actually like you at the end of the interview process.
Absolutely. Well, I already know that this training is going to be 2 hours of empowerment, that people are going to come away knowing it's time well spent, time that they've invested in themselves, and time that is going to pay off later, literally.
We certainly hope so.
Yes. Well, I also wanted to talk about your book. I believe that this is a book that God has given you for such a time as this. And the title of the book is From Toxic to Tranquility. And so we know that not only are we dealing with a global pandemic, we're dealing with COVID-19 and everything that brings with it, but we are also probably in one of the most politically charged environments we have ever been in my lifetime anyway. It's a very toxic environment. Everybody I know across the world is screaming out for change. But different people have different opinions and ideas on how that change will be accomplished. But long story short, we're dealing with toxic work environments. And so your book is about how to claim your peace in a toxic environment. And so I want to just ask a few questions. What was the thing that really kind of prompted you to put pen to paper as it relates to knowing how to deal with a toxic work environment?
Well, so at the beginning of our discussion today, Pastor, and you asked me to talk a little bit about myself. And I just want to follow up and say that although I've been a nurse for over 20 years, and I've worked in HR, and I've worked with physicians, surgeons, people in the C-suite, and different things like that, I yet still found myself working in a toxic workplace environment. And unfortunately, no matter where you find yourself, none of us are immune to being in that position. And some may say, oh, that'll never happen to me. I'll do this, I'll do that. But you really don't know where you may be or where you may find yourself. And to tell you the truth, I was in denial. I felt like I was managing well. I was doing things well, and everything was working well. And as the saying goes, one day I felt like I was on top of the world, and the next day the world was on top of me. So that's when I realized, and everything was going really fast. And then when I slowed down, and I was really having physical symptoms from the workplace environment, and I had a feeling that once I came out of it, that I just wanted to keep it to myself. And then I said, I think I need to share this. And honestly, it was a humbling experience because that being transparent was something that I really didn't want to do because I'm Dr. Hawkins.
Right. You got a reputation to uphold.
But I've had so many people who have told me that it has helped them. And that they've appreciated it. And even if it was just one, and actually even if it was just none, it was therapeutic for me.
Absolutely.
To do that.
That's one thing I love about the Lord, is that nothing is wasted in God's economy. Everything that we go through, God can take that is meant to work against us and cause it to work for us. And many times we think we're going through something and we're just going through to go through. But so many times God is going to use that for you to be able to reach back and minister to someone who is what he's already, where they are, where God has already brought you through. So I think it's amazing what you've done. And let me just say, I appreciate your transparency, your vulnerability. And that's really what I find, as a leader that people really cling to. They really don't care as much about our successes as they care about the processes we've gone through to get there. Because sometimes people can see you from the outside looking in and they'll think, I can't make it to where Dr. Hawkins is because everything was working in her favor. She didn't have to go through, only to find out, you have been through what I'm going through. You have had some bumps in the road. You have had some daggers to your heart, And so when people begin to realize everything you're going through, it's normal. It's par for the course. It's part of the process, So let's just talk a little bit about that. How can people tell if they're in a toxic environment? What are some of the markers for toxicity in the workplace?
So I always say I like to be clear. Because as people of God, I think that there is a very fine line that I think we should walk when it comes to workplaces and toxicity. And the first thing that I think we should do is first search inward for accountability. And so I always say start there. Sometimes the hardest conversations that we can have is with ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I always say, start with yourself for that. Look and see what it is that we, myself, are contributing to that situation. And so in my book, I talk about the things that I contributed to that behavior. That in no way absolves that other party of anything, but I had some passive aggressive stuff going on that I had to face.
Absolutely.
And that I had to deal with to see what it was that I was contributing to that. And as a woman of God, I had to be mature about that thing. And I had to address that. It wasn't fun, but I had to clear that away, and I had to let God begin to work on me with that. So I say that's the first thing that we really need to do is define that. I think there's a difference between having a tough boss and having a toxic boss. So I think those are the things that we first really need to clear up. Do you have a tough boss? Because it's good to have a tough boss.
Sure.
If you have a tough boss, that helps you grow.
That
helps you
bring
build.
out the best.
They bring out the best.
They demand
in you.
growth.
Absolutely. That tough boss is going to get you ready for that next level in your life. But that toxic boss, there's a big difference between that. So I think as people of God, we need to be clear on those things. So after that's done, then I think that you really need to be in tune with your emotions. And oftentimes, I think it's always spiritual first for me. We feel that we go through things and we're just supposed to deal with it because we're people of God. I just need to go through this. No, we should not be going through stress. God don't want us to be going through stress.
Especially
that's not
all day,
God.
every day.
All day, every day. That's just your routine. So for me, I was having physical symptoms that I was noticing but ignoring.
Wow.
I was noticing them but ignoring them so much to the point that I did not even notice them anymore.
Wow. So you normalized.
I normalized.
And allow what should have been a stage to become a state.
Exactly.
A state of being.
Exactly. The eyes squinting because I was having headaches. I just started squinting all the time. and it just became my norm. The muscle tensions, it just became my norm. The clenched fist, it just became my norm.
Wow.
To where I just couldn't ignore it anymore. So what I'd say is, to address that, how do you feel when you are stressed?
Right.
Do you know how you feel? I mean, your physical symptoms when you are stressed. And so I would say, get a piece of paper and write it down. What are your stress, emotions, and feelings? And it can be different for different people. But write those stress, emotion, feelings, and triggers down. And you'll be surprised of what you've normalized.
I know one of the things that you said is that our bodies have a way of reminding us of the things we refuse to see.
Yes.
And I just be transparent. I definitely have had those markers as well. And I was telling you earlier, it's amazing what we can begin to tolerate within our own bodies that we don't realize we're tolerating, and begin to normalize what is not normal.
Right.
Just not realizing, hey, this is off, or this is not right, or I shouldn't be feeling this way all the time. So when you find yourself in that place, we know we need to do that inward searching first to see, what am I contributing to this? What is my part in this? What is my responsibility? But when you begin to see yourself carrying stress in a way that is not normal, and carrying it in a way that is not healthy, whether that be physically, emotionally, spiritually, what are some things you can do to begin to respond to that in a healthy way?
Well, so there are a couple of options, and there's no cookie cutter for everyone. And as I was sharing, there are some people who say, if you're in a toxic workplace environment with the toxic boss, there are some people who say, just quit, just leave, just walk away, just run. But the mailman, as I was saying, he don't know, or she doesn't know, and don't care that you're in a toxic workplace environment.
Right.
So those bills gonna hit
absolutely
the same time, the same month, every time.
And
so
if you can't pay them, that's gonna add more stress.
So you tried to fix one problem and you made 5 more problems. So what I say is, everyone's situation is yet different. So assess your own situation. And so there's no cookie cutter, but based on what your own situation is, then if you are able to exit that workplace environment, then make a plan to do so. However, I will say this, lessons sometimes have a way of circling back around to us.
Absolutely.
So make sure you're not running from a lesson, because somehow or another, that spirit that was in that box will follow you. They'll either follow you to another boss, you'll meet them in a parking lot at the church, or somewhere, and you'll have to address that. So that's why I take the perspective that I take of how to claim your peace. Because when you claim something, if I say this is my cup, then I'm taking this cup with me wherever I go. So wherever you go, if you claim your peace, then you take that peace with you wherever you go. Whether you take it to another job, whether you take it with you to this job. So I give examples of what you do wherever you're at, if you're with that boss, if you're not with that boss. So the examples that I give are actually related to journaling and giving advice of how to protect yourself in the workplace, and how to make a plan so that if you are going to stay, then you stay. If you are going to leave, then you leave. And then also from a spiritual perspective, I also like to say that sometimes a toxic workplace environment is there as God's way of telling us that we've outgrown that environment. And if it wasn't toxic, then we would have never thought about leaving.
Right.
So that's not always a negative thing for us to be in a toxic workplace environment.
Yeah.
So it's really not a one size fit all
Sure.
solution.
Sure. That's one of the things I love about the book, because a lot of times there aren't books like this for the Christian environment.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of books, but they're secular books. They're written from a secular perspective, and I love the spiritual accountability to your approach.
Right.
And we know as Christians, every environment is not going to be ideal.
Right.
God calls us to be salt. He calls us to be light in the midst of darkness. So sometimes God positions us in certain places for us to be the change we're looking for.
Absolutely.
For us to be a catalyst for change. But then there are some situations where it doesn't really matter who you are or what you bring, depending on who is, in power, in decision, in the
Right.
seat of making decisions there.
Right.
Sometimes, you're limited to what you can and cannot do outside of the prayer closet.
Absolutely.
But I'm so appreciative for you writing this. So how can people move from a place of toxicity to a place of tranquility? I've heard some people say, I love my boss. I have a great boss.
Mm-hmm.
It's the people I work with.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I know from different workplaces, you can have a great synergy among a group, and then one new hire can throw everything off. One person can bring just chaos to everything,
Mm-hmm.
And so having the right group, the right synergy is definitely important, but we don't always get to control that.
No.
So how, if you're in a place of toxicity, you're going to be there. God placed you there. How can you reclaim your peace and move from a place of toxicity to tranquility? I know you mentioned journaling. I know you mentioned looking inward and really, searching yourself. Outside of those two things, what's one or two more things people can do to reclaim their peace?
So there are a lot of things that can disrupt your peace. And so it's not all about your supervisor or your boss. So I like to use the school system, for instance, teachers in the school system.
Sure.
They can love their principal. They can love their superintendent. But if they're working in a system or a structure that doesn't support the work that they're trying to do, then that can be a toxic workplace environment.
Sure.
So, and a bad system will always outweigh good people all the time who are trying to do, unless the system shifts in some sort of way, shape, or fashion. So in those particular situations, then you look for other mechanisms to gain your peace through. In those instances, and you can probably, this is probably one of those times where you don't have to nod your head. You can just kind of like blink past her. This is one of those times where you look for the calling and the mission.
Absolutely.
And I think that a lot of pastors probably run into instances like this with church work.
Sure.
That's when you start looking to, what am I called to do? And what is the mission that I'm called to do, when those outside forces or those other things like just weigh you down so heavily, and you don't feel like maybe not you, but but a person in that role don't feel like they are maybe getting the support, or don't feel like they have the actual encouragement or whatever. Then that peace has got to come from the calling. It's got to come from the mission.
Absolutely.
It's got to come from those other things, and then that becomes the motivating factor. So it's going to depend on those other things, and that's going to be the catalyst in those particular. But it's got to be something. You've got to have some sort of extrinsic or intrinsic motivator in order to claim your peace with. Yeah. And when you find those type of scenarios, then again, that what you claim, you take with you.
Yes.
So you found pastors. I think there's been in the news lately a pastor who, because he took a stand on racial equity, his church didn't claim him anymore, and so he took that he claimed that mission.
Yeah.
And he moved somewhere else where he was embraced.
Absolutely.
So he claimed the mission.
Right.
And he moved on with his peace.
That's right.
And so that's what you have to do in those type of scenarios.
That's very good. That's very good. I know you mentioned the calling. Many times with the calling, God gives the passion. You know, and it doesn't mean that you don't have days of weariness or days where you have to be recharged and get a refreshing. But, you know, for me being in a leadership position, I feel like I'm called to support those who work alongside me. So I don't look to them for my support. I'm grateful to get it. And I have very supportive people around me. But I've learned from me as a leader, I have to drink from a deeper well, that I cannot look to the people I lead for my support. My support has to come from drinking deeper.
Right.
And I have to have other people over me that I draw my strength and my support from. And so sometimes it may be that people are looking for support in the wrong places. Absolutely. Yes, well, I'm so excited to have you with us today, and I'm excited for two reasons. One is because of your approach. You took the time to put pen to paper to give people something they can take with them to read at their leisure. But I'm equally excited about this opportunity for training that is coming up. So where there are people who say, you know, I'm not happy doing what I'm doing. I know that there's something much bigger than me that God is calling me to, or, you know, I just want to improve my ability to sell what I have to offer. You know, I want to join what God has given me with someone moving in the same direction. All of these things, they're going to get the opportunity to receive on October the 24th. And that's from 10 a.m. to 12 noon via Zoom. So no one has to worry about unnecessary exposure or coming into an environment with people they don't know and haven't been around. This is a safe way to receive training, to just continue to sharpen your skills, and to continue to improve and enhance what you have to offer.
Yes, ma'am.
So again, we're going to put the information at the bottom of the screen. We're going to also tell you how to receive Dr. Hawkins' book, From Toxic to Tranquility, learning how to reclaim your peace in toxic work environments. She's got the skills, she's got the background and the work experience necessary and the wounds and the scars to give you some information and to help you avoid some of the wounds and the pitfalls that she's had to face. And so is there anything else that you want to share that I've not prompted you to share today? Anything else?
Nope. Just look forward to seeing you on the 24th. And I pray that you be blessed, and just ask that you pray for me as I attempt to minister to God's people.
Absolutely. And you're going to do a phenomenal job. I'm excited about the opportunity to offer this to our church, to our community, and to whoever's watching, because they're watching from around the world. So to all of our friends across the nation, we thank you for taking the time to join with us. And thank you for taking the time to meet us in the break room. If you're being blessed, we ask you to share this with a friend, and also meet us back next week, same time, same station. Until then, our sincere prayer is that God's absolute best be yours in every area of your life. Y'all make today a great day. We'll see you next time.